This property went from a single container house to a small neighborhood equipped with an outdoor wellness area, a tiny cabin, and a bathhouse in the span of just 1 year. And it wasn't built by hiring large construction crews, nor were the structures created off-site before being assembled on the property. Instead, this neighborhood was developed using a construction strategy that's over 100 years old. The property's caretaker and owner, John Hillis, first built a container home 2 years ago to offer crowdfunded residencies for online creators. But at the beginning of the year, the property's main purpose changed. With the new name of Neighborhood Zero, the property became part of a larger co-living network called Cabin, and its doors were open to a community of nature-loving remote workers. You've heard the saying, if you build it, they will come. But will they come and build it? Turns out, yes. At the beginning of this year, myself and 6 others who had come across Cabin through the internet arrived at Neighborhood Zero for Cabin's very first build week. We all got a free stay and our food was taken care of. In return, we built what is now thought of as the town hall of the neighborhood, the pergola. I led the team as we leveled the ground, created the patio, raised the pergola, and built the fire pit that sits under it. This century-old strategy of utilizing the collective talent of a community to conquer a build, formerly known as barn raising, was beginning to see its modern-day revival. Fueled from the success of Build Week 1, Neighborhood Zero hosted a second Build Week. This time, the team constructed a sauna, which has since served countless meditation, stretching, and hot seat hot take sessions. Build Weeks emerged as the creation of temporary, localized gifting economies. Each participant would arrive with their own unique set of skills, using them to provide for the group the best way they knew how. For some, that was cooking exotic meals. For others, that meant showing off their specialized handiwork. So we've seen that Cabin had already begun experimenting with definancialized exchanges of value, but they were happening just a week at a time. John was looking to expand the neighborhood and increase its housing capacity, and quality homes aren't something that we can throw together in a week. Yet, John needed the talent that Build Weeks provide, but for a longer duration, and that's where I came in. Again. At the start of September, I returned to Neighborhood Zero, this time as its first builder in residence. I committed to living on the property for the following 4 months to tackle the quest of increasing Neighborhood Zero's housing capacity. My goals were ambitious. I set out aiming to add 2 tiny cabins to the property. At the time, we were calling these shed rooms. To simplify the infrastructure we'd have to build, these cabins were designed without bathrooms, so a centralized bathhouse would also be needed to give both tiny cabin residents and the public bathrooms that they could easily access. I also set out to find the treasure that John had buried somewhere in the Texas Hill Country, because why would I not? Oh, and also during my stay there, I committed to making a video a week for the first time ever. Like I said, ambitious. The first tiny cabin I completed, and man, was it ever cool to live in a house that I built. Well, mostly built. One of my first tasks was clearing a path to the cabin, as the cabin shell was actually delivered by a remote control robot. From there, I further insulated it, finished out the interior, and built the furniture that would divide the 10x16 cabin into 2 parts. The living area, which consists of a desk and kitchenette, and a sleeping area, which consists of a bed, clothing storage, and 2 bedside tables. I had some of my best sleeps ever in that cabin. Between the cozy feeling of the wooden interior, the warm lighting, and the natural ventilation, I feel I successfully created the feeling of a human nest that I was going for. So as for that first goal, I can proudly say I completed it. One of the most challenging parts about building that cabin was the infrastructure work. The ground in much of the Texas Hill Country is rock. This required me to rent a giant rock saw in order to run water and electricity to the cabin. While I had the rock saw, I also used it to tackle the trenching required for the bathhouse to have water and electricity and be hooked up to the container house's septic system. We decided to build the bathhouse entirely from scratch, meaning I was going to need some extra hands in order to get it up off the ground. Thus began the Bathhouse Build Weeks. For 2 weeks, over a dozen incredible people cycled through Neighborhood Zero, and together we were able to create the bathhouse's concrete pier foundation and frame its floor and walls. This being Cabin's 4th and 5th iteration of a Build Week, John and I emerged from that experience with a clearer understanding on how they're best ran. The main lessons were to have an abundance of side quests so that there was always a way to help, incorporate structured mornings to go over progress to date and goals for the day, and have printed physical plans. Communal dinners every night as well, but that's a given. An example of a side quest is when Jackson and I built a gym in a day, or when Dave created a geocaching scavenger hunt game across the 28 acres that is Neighborhood Zero. There are opportunities to put additional hands to work when the main project has all the hands it needs. With the build weeks complete, the bathhouse was left to me to finish up as best as I could. I knew the siding would be tough as a one-man job, so I recruited my childhood best friend Reed to come out for a week of climbing ladders and reconnecting for the first time in years. Despite good progress that week, days were running out. It eventually became clear that I had underestimated the time installing all of the infrastructure would take, as well as the intricacy of the bathhouse's plumbing. It was my first time plumbing. I was able to get the bathhouse to a point where the guts of it, its electrical, water, and waste systems are all wrapped up. largely due to a big final push in the last 2 weeks where I was joined by my hero of a dad. Its enclosure is also complete, meaning now it's up to the rest of the community to add the interior finishes, finish the outdoor shower, and paint the siding. It's too bad I wasn't able to complete the bathhouse, but now it'll be a project that has even more of the community's fingerprints on it, and that seems fitting for public spaces. So as for the bathhouse goal, I took it pretty far but didn't complete it. Let's call it 60% done. That leaves 2 goals, the second tiny cabin and buried treasure. Much like the first, I got the second cabin shell delivered, meaning now the first has a neighbor. As of making this video, the second tiny cabin remains as an unfinished shell and is being used as a temporary tool shed. On the bright side, this gives us time to test out the design of the first tiny cabin and see if there's anything we'd want to tweak before tackling the second. When John and I contrasted the build process of the first tiny cabin with the bathhouse, it became apparent that building from a shell is a huge time unlock. Much of my time spent on the bathhouse was used to get it to a very similar place to that of something that we could have outsourced for a comparable price. So although its interior remains unfinished, I'd say the second tiny cabin is about 40% done. Now, this has to be the most surprising insight that emerged from my 4 months at Neighborhood Zero. My strategy of doing nothing and somehow stumbling across the buried treasure didn't work. I know, I'm baffled as well. That means it's still up for grabs, so have at her. This was definitely a pass or fail kind of goal, and I failed. 0%. So if we add up these numbers and take the average, I passed my own expectations. To be clear, that's passed, not surpassed. I definitely didn't surpass.
Okay. So where does this leave us? I asked John.
Charlie.
Okay, John. I mean, yeah, my 4 months is over. My flight leaves in 4 hours.
Pretty crazy.
It's been an incredible 4 months.
Yeah, it has been.
Where do we go from here now that I leave?
Well, you've built a lot of stuff out here. There's always more to be done. So the hope is that you're the first of many builders and residents out here at Neighborhood Zero and across Cabin neighborhoods. And I just hope we can keep bringing people into the Builders Guild that can fill the very big shoes you've left.
With a place like this, it seems like we're always building. What's the idea for what this becomes in the next 50 years?
Yeah, 50 years is a long time, but we like to think on long time horizons at Cabin. So, my hope is that over the next 50 years, this continues to be a place that's co-created by the community out here at Neighborhood Zero in the same way that it has been so far. All of the structures out here are things that members of the community said, I want to build this, and community members rallied around that, and we made it happen. So I think that's the most special thing about this place, is that it grows organically. My personal hope would be that we continue to build things that are really deeply integrated with the natural environment, high density and walkable, human-centric, built right into the spot where they're intended to be and in line with the things that the community most wants and needs.
This was a new little adventure for you, getting a property like this and turning it into what it is now. What advice do you have for anybody who's wanting to start their own little rural property of their own?
Yeah, well, it's a wild journey. It's hard to imagine, but this whole place right here was just an empty piece of land 2 years ago. It's been hard. I'm certainly not going to pretend it's been easy, but it's been a lot of fun, and we've made some great friends along the way, and that's I think all you can really ask for in life. And if anybody else wants to do a project like this, I'd encourage them to understand what they're getting into, but then be excited to go on the adventure.
And overinvest in infrastructure.
Overinvest in infrastructure, always. That's right.
Great. Well, thanks for having me, John.
Yeah.
I look forward to coming back.
Thank you so much for being here, Charlie. It's been a real pleasure. We'd love to have you out here anytime.
4 months on this beautiful rural property in Texas taught me a lot. It showed me the benefits of surrounding yourself with wonderfully bright people, the calmness that you get from being in a low stimulation environment like Neighborhood Zero for a long period of time, and the raw creative power that you can find in a community of like-minded individuals. Next up, I finished my last 4 months of school and get my degree from the University of Waterloo in architectural engineering. After that, I'm gonna keep on building, except this time I want to empower other people to build, people like you. If you have your own dream of building a cabin in the woods, or designing your own backyard office, or creating your own garden studio for whatever creative task you like best, then I would suggest you sign up for my email letter so I can give you the tools to do so as soon as they're ready. Every single episode in this Builder in Residence series can be found in the description, as well as that sign up link for my email list. Until I see you in the next video, I encourage you to make stuff this year. I encourage you to gift your gift. Thank you for watching this exclusive series from your friendly neighborhood builder in residence. I'll catch you in the next adventure. Texas, Texas, Texas.